Hello, this is Shmuel Moshe, and you are listening to the Weekly Parashahcast, the weekly Torah portion podcast where I read the weekly Torah portion and then provide my own interpretation of the text. I'd like to remind everybody, as always, I am not a Torah scholar, just somebody who wished to study the Torah. This week's portion is Parashat Tzav, landing on the 20th of Adar, Bet 5784, March 30th, 2024. The meaning of Tzav is command in the context of this Torah portion, and begins on Leviticus chapter 6. Let's get started. First portion, Leviticus chapter 6, verse 1. You can follow along on Chabad.org. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Command Aaron and his sons, saying, This is the law of the burnt offering. That is the burnt offering which burns on the altar all night until morning, and the fire of the altar shall burn with it. And the Kohen shall don his linen tunic, and he shall don his linen trousers on his flesh, and he shall lift out the ashes into which the fire has consumed the burnt offering upon the altar, and put them down next to the altar. He shall then take off his garments and put on other garments, and he shall take out the ashes to a clean place outside the camp. And the fire on the altar shall burn on it. It shall not go out. The Kohen shall kindle wood upon it every morning, and upon it he shall arrange the burnt offering, and cause the fats of the peace offerings to go up in smoke upon it. A continuous fire shall burn upon the altar, it shall not go out. And this is the law of the meal offering, that Aaron's sons shall bring it before the Lord to the front of the altar, and he shall lift out of it in his fist from the fine flour of the meal offering, and from its oil and all the frankincense that is on the meal offering, and he shall cause its reminder to go up in smoke on the altar as a pleasing fragrance to the Lord. And Aaron and his sons shall eat whatever is left over from it. It shall be eaten as unleavened bread in a holy place. They shall eat it in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. It shall not be baked leavened. As their portion, I have given it to them from my fire offerings. It is a holy of holies, like the sin offering and like the guilt offering. Any male among Aaron's sons may eat it. This is an eternal statute for your generations from the fire offerings of the Lord. Anything that touches them shall become holy. All right, that's the end of the first portion, so we have the very specifics on how the Kohanim are going to handle the burnt offering. Incidentally, the fire, it seems, is not permitted to go out, and the Kohen will wear one type of garment when doing part of it, and then he'll change clothes for the other part as he exits. And of the meal offering, they'll be able to actually eat from it, a portion that is not consumed by the fire. So they will actually have that as that's basically like their part of the portion that they get to eat, right? So it's the holy food that gets to be eaten by the Kohanim, and that is their portion, right? For all of Aaron's descendants, the males can take, just specifically, this is like God saying, here's my plate of food, a piece of that plate goes to you. And it's holy, super holy as it gets. On to the second portion, chapter 6, verse 12. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, This is the offering of Aaron and his sons, which they shall offer to the Lord on the day when one of them is anointed. 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a perpetual meal offering, half of it in the morning and half of it in the evening. It shall be made with oil on a shallow pan. After bringing it scalded and repeatedly baked, you shall offer a meal offering of broken pieces with a pleasing fragrance to the Lord. And the Kohen who is anointed, instead of him from among his sons, shall prepare it. This is an eternal statute. It shall be completely burnt to the Lord. Every meal offering of a Kohen shall be completely burnt. It shall not be eaten. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to Aaron and to his sons, saying, This is the law of the sin offering. The sin offering shall be slaughtered before the Lord, in the place where the burnt offering is slaughtered. It is a holy of holies. The Kohen who offers it up as a sin offering shall eat it. It shall be eaten in a holy place, in the courtyard of the tent of meeting. Anything that touches its flesh shall become holy. And if any of its blood is sprinkled on a garment, the area of the garment upon which it has been sprinkled you shall wash in a holy place. An earthenware vessel in which it is cooked shall be broken, but if it is cooked in a copper vessel, it shall be purged and rinsed with water. Every male among the Kohanim may eat it. It is a holy of holies. But any sin offering, some of whose blood was brought into the tent of meeting to make atonement in the holy, shall not be eaten. It shall be burned in fire. Chapter 7. And this is the law of the guilt offering. It is a holy of holies. They shall slaughter the guilt offering in the place where they slaughter the burnt offering, and its blood shall be dashed upon the altar around. And all of its fat he shall offer from it, the tail and the fat covering the innards, and the 2 kidneys along with the fat that is upon them, which is on the flanks, and the diaphragm with the liver, along with the kidneys he shall remove it. And the Kohen shall cause them to go up in smoke on the altar as a fire offering to the Lord. It is a guilt offering. Any male among the Kohanim may eat it. It shall be eaten in a holy place. It is a holy of holies. Like the sin offering, so is the guilt offering. They have one law. The Kohen who effects atonement through it, to him it shall belong. And the Kohen who offers up a person's burnt offering, the skin of the burnt offering which he has offered up belongs to the Kohen, it shall be his. And any meal offering baked in an oven, and any one made in a deep pan or in a shallow pan, belongs to the Kohen who offers it up, it shall be his. And any meal offering mixed with oil or dry shall belong to all the sons of Aaron, one like the other. Okay, so breaking this one down for the second portion's conclusion. So first up, we have when a new Kohanim, a new son of Aaron, is anointed, right? So when he's brought up to be recognized in the holy men, there's a whole proper formula you got to follow here. You basically, the protocol is you take 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour for a perpetual meal offering, half in the morning, half in the evening, and remember the fire is supposed to keep going, right? So you're putting part of it in the internal fire. Then beyond that, it shall be made with oil and so on, like the very specifics, like how it's prepared. And it's going to be put together with a pleasing fragrance to the Lord. And he, the guy who's getting promoted, basically, he's the one who's going to do this. So this is kind of like his initiation ritual, literally. Beyond that, every meal offering of a Kohen shall be burnt completely, right? So when they make a meal offering, they burn all of it. Right, it's not shared, it's not to be eaten, like it all goes up. Now, when it comes to the sin offering, it's got some pretty interesting breakdowns here. Basically, the one who does the actual work by bringing up the offering and stuff like that, that is the Kohen who shall receive it as his portion. So keep that in mind. Also, interestingly, talking about the blood, if anything touches its flesh, anything that touches its flesh shall become holy. If any of its blood is sprinkled on a garment, where it gets sprinkled, that area has to be washed in a holy place. So that's very interesting. The blood has a sort of spiritual power, what be it to need to be purified or so on. Now, also interesting is the difference between an earthenware vessel versus a copper vessel. So if it's made of pottery, then it needs to be destroyed, like it shall be broken. But if it's metal, a copper vessel, it can be cleaned essentially. This is not the first time, or this is not the last time we'll hear about an earthenware pot needing to be destroyed. So it's interesting. Basically, it's like the idea that once it has been touched by certain things, clay has a new property and it cannot be considered to be clean anymore. Now, also noting that blood itself has its own significance in all of this. So any sin offering of some of whose blood was brought into the tent of meeting to make atonement shall not be eaten, it shall be burned in fire. So that's also worth noting. The whole presence of blood, remember the commands say don't eat blood. So that's also significant. Guilt offering, once again, dashing the blood all around. The Kohen who does it, the Kohen shall cause them to go up and smoke on the altar as a fire offering to the Lord. Any male may eat it. Sin offering and the guilt offering have the law. The Kohen who does the atonement, the one who does the ritual, gets to eat it, as I mentioned before. But if it's something done with baking in the pan, when it's like, or rather any meal offering that's with oil dry, it's just a mixed meal offering, all of the sons can eat it. So like some of them can be eaten by only one guy, and others can be eaten by everyone. You can read the details specifically by going through that part again if you'd like to know which is which, assuming you are the Kohen in question. And I think this is also interesting. Essentially, this is, as I've mentioned in previous portions, this is a guidebook. This is a guidebook for any Kohanim reading this later on. You can know exactly what to do because it's all written right there. On to the third portion. Chapter 7, verse 11. And this is the law of the peace offering which he shall bring to the Lord. If he is bringing it as a thanksgiving offering, he shall offer along with the thanksgiving offering unleavened loaves mixed with oil, unleavened wafers anointed with oil, and scalded flour mixed with oil. Along with the loaves of leavened bread, he shall bring his offering along with his thanksgiving peace offering. And he shall bring from it one out of each offering as a separation for the Lord. The Kohen who dashes the blood of the peace offering, it shall be his. And the flesh of his thanksgiving peace offering shall be eaten on the day it is offered up. He shall not leave any of it over until morning. But if his sacrifice is a vow or a voluntary donation, on the day he offers up his sacrifice it may be eaten, and on the next day whatever is left over from it may be eaten. However, whatever is left over from the flesh of the sacrifice on the third day shall be burnt in fire. And if any of the flesh of his peace offering is to be eaten on the third day, it shall not be accepted. It shall not count for the one who offers it. Rather, it shall be rejected, and the person who eats of it shall bear his sin. And the flesh that touches anything unclean shall not be eaten. It shall be burned in fire. But regarding the flesh, anyone who is clean may eat the flesh. A person who eats the flesh of a peace offering of the Lord, who while his uncleanness is upon him, that soul shall be cut off from his people. And a person who touches anything unclean, whether uncleanness from a human or an unclean animal, carcass, or any unclean carcass of an abominable creature, and then eats of the flesh of a peace offering to the Lord, that soul shall be cut off from its people. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, You shall not eat any fat of an ox, sheep, or goat. The fat of carrion and the fat of an animal with a fatal disease or an injury may be used for any work, but you shall not eat it. For anyone who eats fat of animals from which sacrifices are brought as fire offerings to the Lord, the soul who eats it shall be cut off from its people. And you shall not eat any blood in any of your dwelling places, whether from birds or from animals. Any person who eats blood, that soul shall be cut off from its people. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, anyone who brings his peace offering to the Lord shall bring his sacrifice to the Lord from his peace offering. His own hands shall bring the fire offerings of the Lord. The fat on the breast, he shall bring it, the breast to wave it as a wavering before the Lord. And the Kohen shall cause the fat to go up in smoke on the altar, and the breast shall belong to Aaron and his sons. You shall give them the right thigh as an elevation offering to the Kohen, from your peace offering. Any one of the sons of Aaron who offers up the blood of the peace offering and the fat, he shall have the right thigh as a portion. For I have taken the breast of the waving and the thigh of the elevation from the children of Israel, from their peace offerings, and I have given them to Aaron the Kohen and to his sons as an eternal statute from the children of Israel. This is the grant for Aaron's anointment and his son's anointment from the fire offerings of the Lord, on the day that he brought them near to be Kohanim for the Lord, which the Lord commanded to give them on the day that he anointed them from the children of Israel. This is an eternal statute for their generations. This is the law for the burnt offering, for the meal offering, and for the sin offering, and for the guilt offering, and for the investitures, and for the peace offering, which the Lord commanded Moses on Mount Sinai, on the day he commanded the children of Israel to offer up their sacrifices to the Lord in the Sinai desert. So that's the end of the third portion. Once again, just kind of going over the specifics of each kind of sacrifice, and also I almost want to call it like a bounty or a commission, right? So the Kohanim who do certain things, it gets designated as theirs. So it's almost like an incentive also for the Kohanim to make sure they all get their portion. They have to actually do the work. And it just designates like which kinds of sacrifices are specifically for each individual Kohanim and which ones are to be shared. Then we get into a pretty lengthy explanation about things like, so basically the only one that you can eat casually and leave some over is a voluntary offering, right? So if you just felt like making a sacrifice to God because you just love God so much, that's a voluntary offering. Or as a vow, like you're making a promise. The day it's offered up, it can be eaten, and on the next day, whatever's left over may also be eaten. But on the third day, anything left over has to be burned, right? So anything that is not destroyed on that third day in fire, but is instead eaten by somebody, the iniquity falls on the person who ate it. So instead of it being burned up and sort of consumed by the fire, it's consumed by a person, and that person takes on the burden. With that being said, it's also the case in other specific scenarios of eating certain things or uncleanliness, things of that nature. There's a lot of serious consequence here. We're talking people getting their soul cut off from its people, and there are quite a few examples of this. So don't mess around, basically. Keep it holy, keep it clean, and follow the instructions lest you be cut off. Specific animals, things of that nature. Even certain things like you can work with the corpse of an animal and the fat of the animal, right? But you can't eat it. So when you do that and you become unclean, that's when it becomes a matter of cutting your soul off from the people. So definitely make sure you follow the instructions about waving the offering, and also the portion of that goes to the Kohanim is designated here as well regarding the thigh. So this is how it goes. This is what the Kohanim need to make sure to follow strictly so that they stay within their parameters. Fourth portion, chapter 8, verse 1. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Take Aaron and his sons with him, and the garments and the anointing oil, and the sin-offering bull, and the 2 rams, and the basket of unleavened bread, and assemble the entire community at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Moses did as the Lord had commanded him, and the community assembled at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Moses said to the community, This is the thing the Lord has commanded to do. And Moses brought Aaron and his sons forward, and bathed them in water. And he placed the tunic upon him. Aaron girded him with the sash, clothed him with the robe, placed the ephod upon him, girded him with the band of the ephod, and adorned him with it. And he placed the choshen upon him, and he inserted into the choshen the Urim and the Tumim. And he placed the cap on Aaron's head, and he placed on the cap toward his face the golden showplate, the holy crown, as the Lord had commanded Moses. And Moses took the anointing oil, and anointed the sanctuary and everything in it, and sanctified them. And he sprinkled from it upon this altar 7 times, and he anointed the altar and all its vessels, and the washstand and its base, to sanctify them. And he poured some of the anointing oil upon Aaron's head, and he anointed him to sanctify him. And Moses brought Aaron's sons forward, and clothed them with tunics, girded them with sashes, and bound them up with high hats, as the Lord had commanded Moses. So this is essentially the great anointing of the Kohanim, and Moses conducts this whole entire ceremony to initiate them all into their new status, with Aaron being the high priest of all. And so now we see from Moses to the Kohanim, and then it will be from the Kohanim to their successors. So we see exactly how Moses did it when he created the first Kohanim according to the commandment of God. Fifth portion, chapter 8, verse 14. And he brought the sin-offering bull close, and Aaron and his sons leaned their hands forcefully upon the head of the sin-offering bull, and he slaughtered it, and Moses took the blood and placed it on the horns of the altar, around with his finger, and he purified the altar. And he poured the blood at the base of the altar, and sanctified it, the altar, to effect atonement upon it. And he took all the fat which was on the innards, and the diaphragm with the liver, and the 2 kidneys together with their fat, and Moses caused them to go up in smoke on the altar. And the bull, its hide, its flesh, and its waist, he burned with fire outside the camp, as the Lord had commanded Moses. And he brought near the burnt offering ram, and Aaron and his sons leaned their hands forcefully upon the head of the ram. And he slaughtered it, and Moses dashed the blood on the altar around. And he cut up the ram into its pieces, and Moses made the head, the pieces, and the fat go up in smoke. But the innards and the legs he washed in water, and Moses made the entire ram go up in smoke on the altar. It was a burnt offering with a pleasing fragrance, a fire offering to the Lord, as the Lord had commanded Moses. So here we have the process of the sacrifice being made of the bull. Interestingly, just like in the previous portions, those who were bringing it for sacrifice, in this case, put their hands upon its head forcefully, and this kind of is the indication that this sacrifice is going to be happening. So perhaps the hands forcefully holding it down means that they are holding it down, right, so that it can be slaughtered, or they are exerting that force onto it and then slaughtering it in that order. Either way, this is the process that is true for all sorts of offerings, and Aaron and his sons were no exception. Moses went through the process and followed the specific instructions about how to divvy up the parts of the bull, and now it has been taken accordingly and slaughtered, and the blood sprinkled where it was supposed to be, and then the fire offering burnt up. And also, this is consistent with the other thing about when the Kohanim make an offering on their own, the entire thing goes up. They don't really get a portion. So this is like that too. On to the 6th portion, chapter 8, verse 22. And he brought near the 2nd ram, the ram of the investitures, and Aaron and his sons leaned their hands forcefully upon the ram's head. And he slaughtered it, and Moses took some of its blood and placed it on the cartilage of Aaron's right ear, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. And he brought Aaron's sons forward, and Moses placed some of the blood on the cartilage on their right ears, on the thumbs of their right hands, and on the big toes of their right feet. And Moses dashed the blood on the altar around. And he took the fat, the tail, and all the fat which was on the innards, the diaphragm of the liver, the 2 kidneys together with their fat, and the right thigh. And out of the basket of unleavened bread that was before the Lord, he took 1 loaf of unleavened bread, and 1 loaf of oily bread, and 1 wafer, and he placed them on top of the fats and the right thigh. And then he placed it all on Aaron's palms and on his son's palms, and he waved them as a waving before the Lord. And Moses took them from their hands and made them go up in smoke on the altar along with the burnt offering. They were investiture offerings, as a pleasing fragrance, a fire offering to the Lord. And Moses took the breast and waved it as a waving before the Lord. It belonged to Moses as a portion from the ram of the investitures, as the Lord had commanded Moses. Okay. So the specific portion describing the process now that the ram is being sacrificed and the blood is being placed on the ear, on the thumb, and on the big toe, this, if you recall, was in a previous portion in description. Now it's being followed through upon. So this is, again, we're seeing a lot of this. Moses is being told this stuff. We're hearing that he's gotten the command. And now, later on, we're seeing it actually being performed. This has happened repeatedly throughout the last several chapters of the Torah. On to the end of that portion, right? So they make the sacrifice, they do everything they're supposed to do, and now the Kohanim, it seems, are being properly anointed and appointed. 7th portion, chapter 8, verse 30. And Moses took some of the anointing oil and some of the blood that was on the altar, and he sprinkled it on Aaron and on his garments and on his sons and on his sons' garments. And he sanctified Aaron, his garments, his sons, and his sons' garments with him. And Moses said to Aaron and to his sons, Cook the flesh at the entrance of the tent of meeting, and eat it there, and the bread that is in the basket of the investiture offerings, as I have commanded, saying, Aaron and his sons shall eat it. And whatever is left over from the flesh and the bread you shall burn in fire. And you shall not leave the entrance of the tent of meeting for 7 days. Until the day of the completion of your investiture days, he will inaugurate you for 7 days. As he did on this day, so the Lord has commanded to do, to effect atonement for you. And you shall stay day and night for 7 days at the entrance to the tent of meeting. You shall observe the Lord's command so that you will not die, for thus I was commanded. And Aaron and his sons did all the things that the Lord commanded through Moses. So here we have it. Moses has now put an end to the full process of anointing these fellas, sprinkling the blood and so on the garments, sprinkling it on the sons, everything like that, and then he tells Aaron and company exactly what they need to do. They need to cook and eat it at the tent of meeting, the entrance, and stick around for 7 days, burn what's left over, stay here for 7 days. This is how we finalize this entire procedure. So said the Lord, and Aaron and his sons obeyed. And that's it in a nutshell, and that concludes Parashat Tzav, a very brief portion, but very important, as they all are. This one describing the process of formally anointing the Kohanim, and also some of the rituals on to properly sacrifice. So the order is important, right? So first we are told, okay, so here's how you do it when it's time to make a sacrifice, type A, type B, type C. Now that we've gone over the training, it's time for you to get your appointment. Come on up, folks. It's time to become the Kohanim. And from here, Moses goes through and appoints the family of Aaron, the descendants of Aaron, and goes through the process. And now that they've been appointed through Moses, they will be able to do the appointing themselves for their successors. So this is really how the process all kicks off. And that's it for this week. So once again, thanks for listening. I hope you found it educational. A very short portion, like I said, but still quite significant for the history of the Kohanim. As for now, that's it, but I hope you'll tune in next time as we move into the next portion. Until then, this has been Shmuel Moshe. Thank you so much for listening. I hope to see you next time. Until then, Baruch Hashem.